ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Based Edge podcast. I'm your co-host, Joe Emilio, and with me, as always, is Mork Rock, the other co-host of the show. So, Mork, very interesting topic today that we're going to talk about.
Ooh, what is that? Good to know, Joe.
Like you don't already know.
Yes, I do know. Trying to be confused for the audience.
Okay.
I was like, I'm telling your audience member, like, what are we talking about? What could it be? What?
We're talking about the epic song, Kill the Boer. And we're going to explain for the international audience and people who might be watching that don't know about this. We're going to be explaining the timeline, so to speak, of the current case that is happening about Kill the Boer. But before we get into that, I just want to say, for those of you that are listening in, thank you so much. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, if you're listening on Shopify, thank you so much. Don't forget, you can come over to YouTube and see the visual beauty that is the podcast, Based Edge podcast, that is, because you can see our faces. You can see my face, you can see Mork's face, you can see some visual stuff. We'll have headlines up, videos, and stuff like that. Instead of hearing it, you can also watch it. And you know what? Vice versa. If you're watching this and you want to maybe, you don't have a whole hour in your evening, you think maybe, you want to listen to this, head over to the Apple Podcast. You can listen on your way to work and on your way back from work, or while you're working even. You can listen to us chatting away. And all the links are in the description below. You can catch us on almost every single social media platform that there is, except for Snapchat.
Ew, why not?
Yeah.
Snapchat's dead.
Yeah, I think so.
It's dead.
And unfortunately, Odyssey, we will be on there, but we're deemed not worthy. But okay, so with that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen,
I have one thing to say. So what I did was, specifically for the show, I phoned up Will Smith and I had him blinky blink me from Men in Black, so I'd forget everything pretty much about this, so I can be like an audience member and ask Joe all the questions you would want to ask him.
This is called a neuralizer, and the answer you're looking for lies right here.
I don't like this plan.
Well, I'm trying to remember. Like, it's a good thing I've got ADHD, because it does feel like somebody's running around every now and again with a little blinky blink thing from Men in Black and just erases short bits of my memory. And I'm like, what? I can't remember that. But anyway, I do know most of it. But yeah, like the old stuff. There's a lot of questions I have, and Joe actually went and did some research up to date. He talked to some people in the know, and he's got everything. He's got the deets.
Amazing. All right, let's listen, ladies and gentlemen. At the moment, let's start from here. At the moment, there is a advocacy group, or I guess they're an NPO. They are an NPO, Afriforum, civil society organization. That's the correct.
Yeah, that's the correct term.
Civil society organization known as Afriforum is very controversial for some reason in South Africa. If you really get to know them, they're not that controversial. But anyway, they are fighting one of, or actually the third biggest political party in South Africa, known as the EFF, Economic Freedom Fighters. The president of that party, or as they call him, the commander-in-chief, is called Julius Malema. Now, some of you may have heard of Julius. He's been in the news many, many, many times, especially for saying things like that he's not calling for the killing of white people, at least for now.
I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm saying to you, we have not called for the killing of white people, at least for now. I can't guarantee the future.
Yeah, but I mean, you'd understand somebody watching that, especially as it gets shared on Twitter, they freak out. It sounds like a genocidal call.
Cry babies.
And I mean, he said it again under oath.
In court, yeah.
Yeah, in court, but we'll get to that. So where do I start with this? So I want to stick to the case. I want to stick to the current case that is going on. It's about Kill the Boer song. Okay. Yes. Afriforum and a lot of other South Africans are saying that you can't sing Kill the Boer. It's a call for violence. Yes. It equates to or equals that people will go and kill Boers or Afrikaners, because sometimes Boers are referred to as Afrikaners and vice versa. And Julius is saying, or his side is saying, but it's a song and it's a struggle song from the early 90s during apartheid. It has nothing to do with the actual killing. It's a metaphor for getting our land back. I'm summarizing and paraphrasing for time. People can Google. Yes?
I have questions. Just how is it a metaphor when the words are literally shoot the Boer? Like I don't understand what else is that a metaphor for as opposed to shoot the Boer. Like there's no other metaphor. It's not a metaphor. It is fucking words.
That's a bit of a rant and not a question. Okay, so we move on because here's the thing. Okay, so Afriforum at one point did take Julius or the EFF to court over singing of this song. This was in 2011. Okay,
Wow.
the Johannesburg High Court, the Judge Colin Lamont, presiding as an equality court, had deemed Malema guilty of hate speech for using the song's lyrics. Despite Malema's appeal at the Supreme Court of Appeal, the case was later withdrawn, with both parties opting for mediation. So what happened is, Afriforum was taking them, EFF and Julius Malema, to court. Court ruled in Afriforum's favor, and obviously EFF deciding to appeal the judgment. And during that process, EFF and Afriforum came to a what they call a mediation, which is basically a settlement or an agreement of some sort, which is court binding, by the way, basically saying that Julius cannot use the word kill in the song, which is why some of you will remember he changed the word kill to kiss the Boer.
Yeah, and then he did that for
He did that for a
now.
while. Yeah, up until now. Now, this is where we're getting close now to where we are. So a lot of South Africans will remember the case of Brendan Horner. This was during the lockdown in South Africa. A young farmer was brutally murdered, left on a pole. I'm not going to go into too much detail because of YouTube, but it was hectic. At the time, South Africa the racial tension was high, and not because South Africans are racist, just because the media, everybody fueled it. EFF was really pushing that, racism rhetoric.
This is the time when there was this massive, what was the town called where this all took place? And you had the EFF on one side, you had the police in the middle, and you had all the farmers, Afriforum, and the citizens of the town on the other side going, we don't want the EFF here. And the EFF bolted up for weeks and weeks going, we're going to go.
Yeah.
And
Senegal.
why would they, Senegal. Why were they there though? Why was the EFF there? To defend who? The murderers.
Well, that's the part that nobody really understands.
Okay.
So, I mean, remember, there was a huge build-up to that as well. The EFF wasn't there the first time for Senegal. They were there, I think, second or third time Senegal happened. Yeah. There was 3 court dates. And I think the first one, the farmers, and I don't agree with this, in terms of what they did, or what they're accused of doing, rather, they were so upset that they didn't get a verdict and the guy didn't go to jail or whatever, the case was postponed, that they started to destroy police vehicles and stuff like that. Yeah. So that fueled things, and then that's when Julius said, I remember he said he's going to be at Senegal.
Just don't push our van. Just don't touch our court. You touch it, we touch you. You push, we push double. You shoot, we shoot double. We are not scared of death. We are dead already.
Oh, okay. So this is the time when he decided to defend public property and not burn it down.
Yeah,
usually does at clicks and stuff. When they go break shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. Cool. So it's like he is a flip flopper then.
Well, we know this. Anyway, so here we are, Brendan Horner's court case. Okay, I think it's the 3rd time they're in Senegal or something like that, and
big clash
second time, big clash, like you painted earlier. The Boers on the one side, or the Afrikaners, white, if you will, and then the EFF, right?
Well, it wasn't just white. It was mostly the citizens of the town. and they were. I mean, it's mostly a white town, but they were colored people, there were black people.
Yeah,
it
yeah.
wasn't just like white farmers on one side.
No, it wasn't. And so, anyway, during the proceedings of the court case, the EFF were caught outside of the courtroom chanting, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer."
Yes.
And it was at that moment that Afriforum and Ernst Rutz they rightfully claimed that the case, that this meant that the mediation was broken, because the mediation was that Julius and the entire party and the followers are not allowed to say or sing "Kill the Boer."
Yeah.
They did. Now this prompted this current case that we are in at the moment. When I say we, I mean I'm not part of Afriforum. I'm just saying sane-minded people.
So just a quick viewer question. So would this be the same case that we watched that happened, like, was it last year, the year before, where you had that guy that looked like Jan van Riebeeck, Mark,
Mark,
epical dude, Kif Music, the guy you interviewed.
Yeah.
Is that this is the same court case as that case, right?
Yes.
Or
So
is
that
this one?
is the
Oh
one.
shit! Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So when they broke the mediation at Brendan Horner,
cynical.
Afriforum was like, "Hey, you broke the mediation. Now we're going to go to court." Blah blah blah. And that's where Mark Oppenheimer had the epic cross-examination with Julius Malema and brought out a lot of Julius's just horrible rhetoric. And again,
it was a great example of like an in-depth view of to what he believes, his ideology. It's like, it's really not cool.
No, it's scary. It's very scary.
The other thing I wanted to ask was, so that's also the case, because obviously in that case is where he argues. I mean, he argued the entire time, and maybe you can explain this a little bit more. But their argument was the EFF said, well, they weren't singing "Kill the Boer," they were singing "Kiss the Boer." That was the entire sort of premise of this case, wasn't it? Or am I confused?
No. The premise of this case was, now they were trying to fight to be able to sing "Kill the Boer," and they were fighting that "Kill the Boer" is not hate speech. That was the crux. Okay. So they were arguing. They got this expert. I'm doing air quotes. Expert. To examine the song and explain why the song is not literal and blah blah blah. It's a lot of woke BS. But again, going back to Julius, I want to mention this, and hopefully we can show a clip where Mark actually gets him in a bit of a corner and says, like, "Will you, under oath, say that you will never call for the killing of white people?" At the beginning, he agrees. And then when Mark asks him to do it, he denies it. Here, check this out.
If I asked you to pledge to say, "I will never call for the slaughter of white people," would you make that pledge?
I will do it with ease.
Make that pledge.
Why would I do that?
I'm asking you to make that pledge.
I won't do it.
Make the pledge.
I won't do it.
You won't do it?
Yes.
I understand.
Rough.
Cool.
Rough stuff, dude. That's rough stuff.
And I mean, that should alarm anyone, really,
exactly.
Right? That should alarm anyone. I mean, now this is pretty much the second time he said that he's not going to, or that he is going to, or he might rather, let me put it that way. He might call for, he might do a genocidal call. As he puts it, he doesn't know what the future holds. But anyway, so that court case happened. We're not going to go into detail about what happened there. There were a lot of evidence, a lot of even victims of farm attacks were on there. A lot was said, a lot of evidence was handed. Anyway, the Equality Court, the judge decided this is not hate speech. "Kill the Boer" is not hate speech, and Julius is allowed to sing it because, as he is quoted as saying that the song is a struggle song, and therefore it is within the rights of him being able to sing it.
Okay, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So, when you use the term hate speech, what we actually mean is the incitement to violence. The court doesn't perceive singing the song "Shoot the Boer, shoot the farmer." They don't consider that an incitement to violence, because obviously there's incitement to violence and then there's hate speech.
Not necessarily the words. It's more because it's in the context of a song and a struggle song. Therefore, words can be metaphors. Words don't have to be taken literally in songs or struggle songs, and ergo, it's not hate speech. That's essentially, in a nutshell, the argument. And lo and behold, ladies and gentlemen, not a few months later after that, obviously Afriforum immediately wants to appeal. They were granted the leave of appeal, and we're going to get to that. That's what happened this past Monday. We are recording on the 7th of September, so people will be listening to this at some point. We've obviously, this is not live, it's pre-recorded.
Pre-recorded.
So before we get to what happened on Monday, lo and behold, as soon as Malema has the ability or right to air quotes to sing it, he's caught on the 10th anniversary of EFF singing "Kill the Boer." Check this out.
Cyprian Konto Alliance. Shoot to kill the mother. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa, pa, brr, pa, pa.
Yeah, right back at it at the 10th anniversary. And of course, this caught a lot of international attention. Elon Musk got involved on X.
Everybody. This is like just across the board. It was actually good, and I think it's bad. There's sort of a double-edged sword here.
Yeah.
Because it got the community, it got the entire online community to take a note of what's happening, of what people are saying, and it's in this sort of climate, it's like where you can't say certain things. That's pushing it a bit too far, my guy.
Yeah, exactly. And Elon Musk giving his points will show what he said. Someone shared the video of that we just saw, and Elon replying to that saying they are openly pushing for genocide of white people in South Africa. He actually tags the president Cyril Ramaphosa. Why do you say nothing? Now, we're going to touch on this a bit later, so let's park this for a second. But he also replied to a good friend of ours, Ernst van Sale, who also works for Afriforum, Conscious Carical on X, if you guys want to go check him out. Farm attacks in South Africa surge after EFF sings "Kill the Boer" song, which is the whole reason why Afriforum is fighting this so much, is because they do believe that when the song is being sung, they do see, according to their findings, farm attacks go up. And there's an article that we can show, but Elon also replying to that saying the lack of condemnation about EFF actively calling for genocide is appalling. Again, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment, but let's get back to, so we see Elon Musk. Okay, this guy has how many followers on Twitter? 155.6 million followers. So it got a lot of traction.
Yeah, that's double our country. Yeah, it's almost three times our country.
It's half of America, dude. America has 300
insane.
million, over 300 million citizens. But anyway, so with now half of America knowing that this is happening, we get to what happened on Monday. Now, unfortunately, fortunately, depending on how you want to look at this, it was a bit of an anticlimactic situation. I think a lot of people, I thought this was going to be open and shut situation, and but basically how it works, for those of you who may not know, when you appeal something, right, you go to the Supreme Court of Appeals. Basically, you don't have to redo the trial, because this time you're presiding in front of 5 judges, okay, who will all give their judgment at the end of the appeal. And what you do in an appeal is it's your opportunity to either present new evidence, if it's allowed, rehash some of the important parts of the case that you feel maybe, as a lawyer, that you feel maybe it wasn't represented very well in the original case. Maybe you forgot to mention something in the original case. Maybe you, there's a lot of reasons why you could pick certain aspects of the case, bring it up again to drive your point home to the presiding judges, and basically win the turnover of judgment if that's what you're gunning for. And obviously, if you are someone who doesn't want the appeal to change, you want the judgment to remain, then you're going to be fighting against what your opposition says and rehashing why the judgment is actually correct and shouldn't be overturned. So that's in a nutshell. They booked 2 days. They only did 1 day. They were able to say everything in 1 day. They even had a Free Market Foundation have a friend of the court. They went in as friend of the court. Mark Oppenheimer was the one who was the friend of the court. And he got to also say something where he was basically making the point that the law should be equal for everyone. Whether you're a citizen, whether you're a politician, a football player, it doesn't matter. Hate speech is hate speech. Law is law. No one is above the law. That was basically, in a nutshell, his thing. Trying to bring the judges down to earth and say, listen, guys, we know this is a very sensitive topic for a lot of people in South Africa. But at the end of the day, the rule of law must prevail. And unfortunately, there is no verdict yet. And the verdict could be next week, could be next month, could be next year. We don't know. Judges will take as long as they need to. There's 5 judges. They will each give their judgment. And majority wins. So in other words, if 3 out of the 5 decide that the appeal is overturned, then the appeal is overturned. So that's how that works. And here is the juicy information that I have found out. Regardless, I'll say this again, regardless of what the outcome is, the case will go to the Constitutional Court, which is the last court you can appeal to, by the way. After that, whatever the Constitutional Court says, that's final. You cannot appeal it again. It's done. And the reason why I know this is because both sides have said they will appeal it if they don't like it. So, for example, if the courts of appeal decide, okay, we're going to rule in the favor of Afriforum, they're right, this is hate speech, EFF is going to say, no, we're going to appeal this. And of course, if the
goes the other way, same thing happens.
Exactly. Afriforum will say, no, it's hate speech. We're going to appeal this. So regardless of what happens, this is going to go to the Constitutional Court. And then it's going to be really interesting because that you're presiding in front of 8 judges and it might take even longer to get a verdict. So that's where we are. That's where we're at.
Okay.
I feel like it's a lot for you to take in, Mork.
No. I'm thinking about it. I'm like, there's parts of it, and I'm like,
let's talk a bit about like why we wanted to bring this conversation. Why we wanted to talk about this conversation or about this topic. So, I think you and I both agree that the song, that part of the song, is hate speech.
I'm going to disagree with you.
This is where it gets interesting, ladies and gentlemen.
Round 1, fight!
So I would agree. I wouldn't classify it as hate speech. I would call it incitement to violence. I reject the terminology of classifying incitement to violence as hate speech. I think hate speech doesn't exist. I think hate is subjective. I think there's a difference between an incitement to violence and hate speech. So in South Africa, we've merged the two with specific reasoning for that. And the reason is that the government can now use that, as we see with the specific case where they're using the law to their, for example, someone like Julius Malema can come along and the EFF and Afriforum can fight it all they want to. You have the cases like, who's the chick that Vicky Momberg. You've got all these cases of select people. And then you've got people like the South African Human Rights Commission only going after select people because their ideology is completely warped in the sense of they don't believe that people of a specific race can be racist. So therefore, this is a broad sort of stick to bitch slap your opponents with. And that's why that's why I reject the concept of hate speech. I agree that incitement to violence is exactly what it is. And then again, there's a part of me, the libertarian part in me, which is going, like, okay, cool, it's in a song now. So I've deep struggle with this because as someone who makes jokes online, I'm going, so at what point and who decides? Like, hey, incitement to violence is very specific. I can't sing can you sing? Is there any other songs that you know of where people sing about killing somebody else, like, killing my boyfriend or your wife or something. I'm trying to think of, like, is there a case like it's in America? There isn't. There, you can do that because there is no such thing as like, that's not an incitement. It's that's that fine line between artistry and like comedy, satire, and the real world. Like, the EFF aren't using it in a satirical. They're not satirists. They're not comedians. They're a political party. So who they are puts them in a different world. They can't go like, oh, we made a joke now when I was doing a speech. It's like, no, you're not a comedian. You are a politician. So you're in a different realm. So yeah, I would 100% agree that singing the song "Kill the Farmer, Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer" is 100% incitement to violence. They are a political party, and the reason they're doing it, I think the reasoning is twofold. They're doing it because they want to, I don't know, gather clout, because every time they sing it, they get all the media. You just had Elon Musk, which is, I said, the double-edged sword. You've got Elon Musk tweeting it out. They're getting new members. But yeah, they're targeting the lowest of the low. And the more noise they can make, that's why they do these stupid things. Like, they go protest clicks. They go protest these dumb things, because it's just about getting members to pay the money so they can drive Porsches.
100%. And I see your argument about hate speech, and I'm not going to get into an in-depth conversation
No.
about hate speech. We will have that conversation on this podcast, and I want to get Mark Oppenheimer and maybe somebody else involved in this conversation, because I feel like, because like I want to argue what you said, but at the same time, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what the law of hate speech actually says. I don't know it verbatim. So I'd rather have someone who knows that law, and Mark Oppenheimer knows that law, to come onto the show, and we can have a nice debate about what is hate speech, does it exist, and see where we land. I understand the concept that you speak of. I understand that hate speech can be considered subjective, because to take a very light example, the N-word, okay? That is considered hate speech, right? But at the same time...
In South Africa only,
Yeah. Well, the K-word, if you want to be...
K-word, the N-word. But I mean, for example, like this, I can give you a good example, Joe. Like, I can say, Joe, I hate you. No one's going to arrest me for that. No, exactly. But I can't say, but I am hating you for your person. Like, what's the word called? Your integrity, or there's a word in the... Yeah, it's something to do with your integrity or some shit, which is a very vague word, which is exactly why they used it. But I can say, for example, Joe Emilio, I hate you. But I can't say, I don't like you because you're Mexican or Egyptian or South African.
No, you can say that. My example.
Bigotry.
Yeah,
it's out, but that's in the that's the legislation. I can't discrimination based on bigotry, religion.
You have the right to not like me because of that. You don't have the right to say, listen, I'm in control of this establishment, this restaurant, and I don't like you because you're Mexican, so therefore you're not allowed in. That's the discriminatory or discriminatory thing that you can't do. But you can say, I can say I don't like you because you're Afrikaans. That's not going to get me in trouble. What I was going to say,
Afrikaans.
keep lying to yourself. Keep lying to yourself. It's fine. No, so I'm going to give you a very good example.
Okay. Sorry.
You can't necessarily call me something derogatory, and for a Mexican, that would be the equivalent. Mexican. The equivalent of like the N-word or K-word for a Mexican, and it's not even that bad. But if you said it in America to a Mexican, people would be like, "Oh, you can't say that."
Ooh, teach me a new word.
Wetback. You can't call me a wetback. That's very derogatory.
But then if I can't call you that, then you can't call me an iceback.
Why are you?
Because I like the colder climate.
Are you an Eskimo or something like that?
No, but I'm from the winter. My great grand ancestors are from the cold part.
Wait a second. What is a derogatory term for Afrikaners?
I can't even think of any.
I know.
Because I was
Some-
in English class when I was growing up. I never was Afrikaans, so I had the Afrikaans kids bullying me. So they would call me Soti and like that type of stuff. So
But
I
you're
don't
not a
really know. Like,
Soti.
no, that dude, I was. Yeah, I was
I'm
English.
I'm a Soti. Like that. I'm that.
Yeah,
Like,
but so am I. Because my first language was English. It's always was English.
But
I was in
you
English
are
class.
born to Afrikaans parents.
Yeah, but the kids at school didn't give a shit about that. They were like, "You're in the English class. You're a Soti."
Man, so kids. So wait a second. Were they white?
Yeah, of course they're white.
So wait a second. Are you saying, Mark, that you were bullied
I was oppressed.
by white South Africans?
Whites oppressed me, dude.
But you're
I know
white.
exactly. I know exactly what Malema is going through.
Okay. So
It's really not that bad.
okay. So
No, but I mean, the derogatory term for, I would like, this is the thing, like, even the term farmer, it's how you say it. You can, it's like calling
Boer.
people a boss or boer, or like, it's said in a derogatory term. So like,
Maybe.
the meaning changes. I mean, like we used to call the Afrikaners rock spiders,
that is a yeah. Okay,
But I
but
mean, I don't
it's
even know
not
where
as
it comes
bad
from.
as saying N-word, but I mean,
Yeah, of
it's-
course.
Yeah. But anyway, so you can't really call someone by the derogatory term. But here's the thing in South Africa, though, and that's a good point that you bring up. In South Africa specifically, you can't say the K word. You can't say the N word. You will go to jail. You will be fined. You will be hated. Now, some would argue that that is a good thing, and some would argue that that is a bad thing. Now, I understand why you think it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because as a libertarian, hate speech doesn't really exist because, again, hate can be subjective. I can really hate someone, but that person is like Julius is a very good example. I don't like Julius, right? But he's loved by millions, right?
Yeah.
So there we go. That's a perfect example. So I understand the concept of hate speech is subjective. One man's insult is another man's compliment. You can say it how you want, right? And it is subjective. Like if someone calls me a wetback, I can choose to be offended and I can choose not to be offended. And I'll probably choose not to be offended. I'll laugh it off. I'll be like, okay, cool. You know that term, you jackass. But
I mean, but this is the thing, because I think this kind of leads to it. It's like somehow someone's decided that certain offense has currency or has more value than someone else's offense.
But you see, this is where the lawyer needs to come in. How did we get here? How did hate speech come to be? Why? What is the correct parameters of hate speech? Is it because, again, being offended, and I think this is actually something that Mark was fighting against, because they wanted to change the definition of hate speech to be more broad, and he was fighting against that. So again, I want to get him on board. I want to get him on the show. We'll chat about it. I will say that I do think Kill the Boer, like you said, is a call to action. It's like a call to violence or whatever.
Yes, 100%.
But I do lean on the side of it's hate speech. I do. And maybe if we can stick to why it's specifically with Kill the Boer hate speech, is because it is kind of derogatory towards the farmers of South Africa. And
also it's a minority. Not that I think that matters, but like
it does matter.
That has,
it does
but
matter.
Again, when we go down the road of minorities, and you're going like all, in the global sense of the word, Black people are, for example, a minority. When in the global sense of the word, they are not at all a minority. They're in America, they're a minority. That doesn't apply to Africa or South Africa, where they're the majority. But the global community still sees that as such, and then therefore, those laws don't come out of nowhere. I mean, the hate speech laws are things that have, things that are passed in the UK. We've gone like, let's adapt this to South Africa. You know what I mean?
And fair enough, but like the point I was trying to get to is, I think it's hate speech because in the context of what this is used for, and I'm not talking about the song. I mean, we've seen at certain farm attacks where Mark was quoting Ernst Ruth's book. We'll show the clip. Actually, just check this out.
On 6th of March 2009, Alice Lotta, at the age of 76, and her daughter Helen, at the age of 57, were tortured to death on their farm in Allenbridge near Volcom in the Free State. Their home was several hundred meters from the Allenbridge police station. Both women were tortured for hours, being stabbed with broken glass bottles in their vaginas. One of the women also had her breast cut off while she was still alive. Helen's injuries were so extreme that the medical examiner was unable to tell if she had also been raped. Alice had been stabbed in the neck and throat and had drowned in her own blood. Their blood was used to write the words, "Kill the Boer," on the walls of their homestead. The torturers who tortured this mother and daughter to death and then wrote the words, "Kill the Boer in blood."
So yeah, see, there's instances of this happening. Then there's also recently, for those of you who are still in denial about this, as recent as the 13th of August, one also man who works for Afriforum, his name is Jock Broderick, I hope I pronounced that right, saying this about a farm attack.
In the early hour mornings of the 17th of August, Amanda Platt and her husband were attacked on their farm outside Pietermaritzburg. The attackers literally took minutes to break down the security fence and the burglar bars, and then broke their way through the door and started assaulting the couple quite heavily with pipes, crowbars and other instruments, all the while chanting, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer." After that, one of the attackers proceeded to stab Amanda with a spear.
And see, this is the thing, Mark. This is why I'm like, is it hate speech to the point where it's being used at murder scenes? It's being chanted in murder scenes. It's like a call, a scream, a war cry almost, and there's nothing but hate, because some of these we can't even talk and go into detail about some of these farm attacks because they're so gruesome. And that's the thing. When you boil a 4-year-old or something like that, there's been kids who have been boiled, right, alive during these farm attacks. That's not love. That's not like a metaphor. That's not like, haha, playtime. No, that is hate. And that emotion is there. And when not all of them, but I think for a lot of them, especially the ones that do these horrible crimes, when they chant, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer," as they're doing something horrible to someone, that is hate. That is hate speech. And that's where I'm like, I understand where you're coming from. Yeah. I do think that there is some reasoning behind what you're saying, but in the context of just kill the Boer, just like the N-word being such a horrible derogatory thing, because the way that the African Americans were treated back then on the cotton farms and stuff like that, that N-word was a horrible way of addressing Black people. It meant so many other things, and that's why it came from a place of like, you are disgusting, you are below me, and I you should be on the bottom of my shoe, you insect. That's how that word back in the day was like, and that's hate. And I think that's what in some ways we mean by hate speech. It comes from a place of bad, evil vibes. And why do you want to be okay with allowing people to preach that? Because in the case of Kill the Boer, when you have a politician who's able to say these horrible things, now influences millions of other South Africans, you have a very big problem. Maybe I'm misdefining things here.
No.
But
I mean, I've got a thought, right? So. Obviously, yes. Again, I like I said before, I disagree with the framing of what he's doing. I consider it incitement to violence. But here's the thing: which do you think has done more damage towards the sort of the crime we see, the attacks, farm attacks, and that? Sorry, just to preface here, that's something I maybe just want to touch on after this. The concept of the farm murders, because there's a big vibe between that. But which do you think is worse for society or a minority of farmers, which would be a small number of people Julius Malema and them, singing the song on occasion here and there, right? I mean, it doesn't happen that much. Is that worse than the concept of outright from every single news publication, every single messaging, advertisers, schooling, all this stuff, propagating the concept of white privilege, pushing that narrative, that ideology. And from my point of view, I think that's done more damage to minority people, especially in small communities where it's taught now in school. It's taught that, you've got it's in advertising, it's in media, it's in news. All they write about, and this is all we've heard for the last 10 years, is the concept of, how being like, is it okay? It's okay to be white. It's considered hate speech, like in some places. I mean, like that concept of white privilege, the white man needs to fall, white, all this stuff. I think that's done far worse damage to, like, I don't know, I'd say crime, the correlation between that, because you're addressing an entire race. And again, like, this is, I mean, singing the song, the incitement to violence, or singing kill the farmer, kill the Boer, that's on top of that already established ideology that we've been pushing from every department, every aspect of society. We've pushed that. Now you just added that on. So, which is, again, I think that ideology of pushing that one concept is far worse than this thing. But obviously, this is the cherry on the cake. The kill the Boer, kill the farmer. That's the cherry. The other thing we're not even going to look at, and I think that has probably bigger damage done than a society believing this narrative and teaching this narrative across the board.
Absolutely. I think they go hand in hand in some ways. And I think maybe Julius has used that narrative to his advantage because he's come up with things like white monopoly capital, and he uses the white privilege thing a lot as well. And
everything is race-based. Every single thing is race-based.
Identity politics. That's all it is.
That's the thing. So identity politics, I would say, is probably a bigger issue. And I mean, I think it's because of identity politics we ended up where we are today. So wouldn't the best thing to be is like shoot identity politics in the nuts? Sorry.
You're right. But it
doesn't have a gender.
But that's why podcasts like this now exist, right? Based Edge podcast, where we give our based edge opinions, and we're gonna call it as it is. We're gonna say how it is, and you're absolutely right. There's nothing wrong at all with what you've said. And I would go as far as to say that Julius is a very smart man. For those of you who may think otherwise, then you're fooled, because he is a very smart guy, and he's used this atmosphere that we are in, that you speak of, to his advantage.
Yeah,
and much like what Hitler did back in his day, when Hitler was underground and speaking to the working class and the poorest of the poor, in these dingy, offbeat pubs and bars. And it just took one guy with a lot of money and a lot of political influence to say, I want this man front and center of the masses. And before you knew it, everybody was saying, oh, they're not killing Jews. There's no Jew, they're not putting them in camps or whatever, blah, blah. And lo and behold, as soon as Russia came into Poland and discovered what?
Yeah. So this is Joe, this is exactly how he started. He did exactly, this is the rhetoric. And I mean, it's the same thing that I noticed, during the 2015 election. It's that Bernie Sanders sort of rhetoric. It's like Julius Malema, the ANC, they show you a target. The target is the white man, white monopoly capital. It's race-based. That's exactly what Hitler did. Hitler did, okay, cool. Who's the cause of your problems? It's the Jewish people. Oh, they've got own everything. Oh, they've got all the land. They've got all the houses. They've got the business, the banks. And all he did was, for 10 years, he just carried on going, those guys. And eventually, he decided, let's put them in camps. And then everybody was like, oh, they're sending them in camps. No, they're not. Or like, don't worry about it. Or like, hey, Gestapo, there's Jewish people living next door. It's the same. That's what they did. And it's like, all it did was that he spent 10 years normalizing it. And that's what I mean about this identity politics, where we bash people for their, it's fine to bash the white people, the white race. Don't touch anybody else. That's hate speech. Oh God, no offense, dear. Kill me. And that's the last thing. Well, not the last thing. That's the one part I also want to sort of address in the concept and the context of South Africa, where hate speech laws now do exist.
Yeah.
I think in that context, and this is against my libertarian principles, but in that context, I want the laws to be equal. If you're going to arrest Vicky Momberg for comparing people on the beach littering to animals, I'm not going to say what animals, then when anybody from any other race does it, especially the minority, when they make sort of derogatory terms, then I'd like to see the South African Human Rights Commission lay charges too, ya bitch.
100%. And on that, I definitely agree with you, 100%. But let's move on. I think we're going to go a little bit over time, but this is obviously a very interesting conversation. So, let's chat a bit about. Well, actually, I do want to share, and I think it goes with what you've just said. Is I actually was so angry with the video that we just watched with Jock. I watched it today, and I was so angry. I tweeted this: "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer" is hate speech. Song, chant, spoken, it means the same thing. Calling for the killing of any race is wrong. Calling for the killing of any group of people, humans, is wrong. I misspelled fact there. The fact that we still debate this shows how lost we have become as human beings. It's wrong, full stop. I gladly and proudly stand with South African farmers and Afriforum. And that's all that needs to be said. And apparently they're burning farms. Someone tweeted this to me.
Yeah, I mean, I saw stats today. Just I think for August, we were sitting on something like there's 19 farm attacks from 4 farmers. I mean, just to like, like I've kind of secondhand experienced it because my folks were attacked on a farm. So it's like it's not a fun thing. It's like and that's the one part. Like there's 2 concepts of this that I really hate, and this happened a few years ago with I think when the Lauren Southern brought out her documentary Farmlands. There was a massive debate online about no, farm murders aren't real. Why are you focusing on that? Blah, 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 blah. Like it just went on and on. You've got the woke, the one side, the intersectional side going, farm murders aren't happening. That's the thing. And then there's the debate about, well, there is no white genocide. Mm-hmm. And I'm going like, okay, but farm murders exist. And one thing I'd like to sort of bring up, and this is kind of what I noticed. I noticed that a lot of these publications, news publications like the Daily Maverick, all of these people, they forever write about how always questioning this concept of white genocide. And, it's a myth and it's not real. And they're talking about the stats. And at the same part, I see them article after article as well about, pointing out, highlighting that there's people in the LGBT community that are getting attacked because of their, gender or because of their sexual orientation. Yeah, their lifestyle. They're getting attacked for that. And again, there's articles about it. I don't understand how you can see the one that's far less. I think there was 4 in 2022. There was about 36 farm attacks a month, each and every month. But you question the one going, it's not real, it's not bullshit. But the other one is like, oh, something needs to be done. It's terrible. You had the president literally in the last presidential speech and the speech before that talking about gender-based violence, especially against the LGBTQ community. He has not once mentioned the attacks that the minority population farmers experience. I mean, that's utterly retarded, the fact that that's not being brought up.
Of course. And I mean, that's why, and we can actually get into this now, like, Elon Musk pointing out how the media and even the president don't talk about white genocide. Why? Now, I'm not going to say, actually, let me say this.
Yeah.
Let's make it clear. Because there's a lot of people that think that Afriforum is pushing that narrative that there's a white genocide. And Afriforum has never once, not ever, said that there's a white genocide.
No.
So for those of you who think that, you are sorely mistaken. I don't know how they got embroiled in that. but I think the media had something to do with it.
I can explain that one. I can
Okay.
explain. It's called gaslighting. It's like it's straw man. They basically what happens is you can't argue the actual facts, so you make a straw man, and you go because the argument is going like white farmers are facing terrible violence, and they're going, what do you mean? And then they go, and I think there was one time this was brought up a couple of years ago. It was the study about I think the people from who was it again the what Genocide Watch or something like that. They look at certain triggers of the 7 stages of genocide, and they went like I think South Africa's on stage 4 or something, where it's like you vilify a specific race, a specific minority for X amount of time, then the next thing is this, then violence starts to increase and all this, and then someone went up going, it's starting to look like white genocide. Yes, I'm not saying it, nobody hasn't said it. There is going to be some tunny maybe on her WhatsApp group that's going, oh shit, the white genocide or stuff. But no one has said that there is white genocide. No one has ever said that. We have not said it once on this thing. When we correlated it to what's happened with the Jewish people, we're not saying the two things are the same. Nobody's gassing white people. We didn't say that. All we're saying is you have certain elements that you look for. You're going, there's certain triggers. Like if there's a kid at school and he's like he starts cutting up little animals, right? And the next thing he's fighting at school, he's bringing knives and stuff, and the next thing he's breaking in, you kind of can predict where he's going to go after that, right? Jail. So you're saying, and this is what the thing is, people going, oh, looks like we're headed for jail. Going, no, he's not. There's no jail. This kid's never gone to jail. Like, what? This is the ridiculousness of it. Yes, we're saying that these are things that lead up to these things. We've got history, but the problem is that the intersectional woke left hate history. Communism, socialism, never worked, never will.
Yeah, 100%. And like the thing is, like we also need to mention this is like the white genocide topic, like you said, it's also a very heated debate in South Africa. And what's annoying, to your point earlier about journalists or media, they start to make fun of the white genocide. We had this journo, what's his name?
The editor from literally the editor of the Daily Maverick.
Yes, I'm trying
so
to
this
find...
this has happened.
Oh, Richard Poplack saying, what wine pairs with white genocide? I mean, really?
Oh, he's so funny, Joe. No, Joe, listen. He's actually a comedian. This guy, he's the best comedian ever. Like
Never
his
heard
stuff
of
is his stuff is so higher grade funny. Like we're too stupid to understand. That's why he got one of his appy journalists to write a complete explanation the following day of how deep and funny the joke was and how South Africa doesn't have a sense of humor.
There was another comedian who actually did a song on white genocide. Who I'm not going to mention his name, but I don't want to give him more airtime. Who I think he still does comedy, but he was actually fired because he was a journo as well, and he was fired because he said something defamatory to a political party's followers, and he also had done a song about white genocide. He's basically making fun of white genocide. I will send you the video. Don't show it on.
No,
the show. But maybe most South Africans just don't get it, man. Maybe
I mean, this is the thing that just completely boggles my mind. You have people who are literally who get offended, like literally where they will go to the point they want to sue people because mentioning something about, for example, like slavery. Not a single person alive, this generation or the previous generation or the previous generation before that experienced it, yet somehow they feel trauma. Whereas you have people who experience, and this is what I saw during that Brendan Horner case. So these people, the family of the victim are there, and you have the EFF there, going, you guys, all this is bullshit, farmers is a joke, this is all a joke. You're going like, You've got this same people who feel one way about it, and then in the same breath are like, making fun of people who literally experience the horrors of that kind of situation. It boggles my mind.
I think it
is insane.
It is worth stating that the Brendan Horner case turned out to It took a very interesting turn, and I'm not sure what the end result was. But
what happened? I can't remember.
It turns out that cops were even involved. So,
yes,
yeah. So maybe not the It was. There's accusations. Let me put it that way. There's accusations. Last I checked, there's accusations that the South African Police Department staged it as a farm attack.
Oh,
now. That's allegations. I don't know if it's true. I haven't checked up, and the case has kind of gone cold as well last time I checked. So we'll see. We'll see. Maybe something comes out, but this is South Africa. Unfortunately, not a lot of stuff gets solved. But I will say this: regardless of what it was, whether it was a real farm attack or it was some weird conspiracy thing that was happening, that guy, that Brendan Horner, he was, I don't know, he was like 14 or something. He was young. He was like, I
think he was 16 or something, 16, 17.
Yeah.
He was 18. Young. He was 18. He was like a young farm.
Yes, he was a young farm manager. I remember now. Yeah.
Assistant manager or some shit.
Yeah. But still, younger than 20.
Dude,
life is gone.
Yeah, but again, and this is the thing, is that a lot of times I hear people go like, yeah, well, there's murder across South Africa. I go, but there's a differential difference between the two. You know, yes, crime in South Africa, 78 people, 78, 80 people are murdered every single day, 160 rapes every day. It's absolutely bizarre. It's disgusting. But then on top of it, you have the farm murder situations, which is just a different kind of violence. It's like, you know, where people are, they're tortured. I mean, like, you don't hear of torture happening. Like, yeah, there was 3 people were killed yesterday. 78 people were killed. How many of them were tortured? None of them. Okay. Yeah. It's literally just, it's a different level of violence, and it's violence across the countries. Again, the whole vibe of like, if we could solve any kind of violence, if we didn't have a pimp as a police minister, maybe we could do something like stop funding social welfare, put all the money in keeping people safe. When you get it down to like 5 people, like only 5 people are getting murdered a day, which is still too much, maybe then you can start paying people for social welfare and all the shit.
Yeah.
Up until then, like let's do the one thing correctly first, instead of, because you can't. It's like, when are we going to go, listen, enough's enough, when it's 150 people a day, 200? I mean,
listen,
more people are getting killed here than in the Ukraine or any war.
That's true. And I think, having a discussion about the crime in South Africa is worth having on its own, because we can talk about so much. And just to prove to people that we're not only focusing on farm murders. So we will do an episode on crime in general in South Africa, and we'll talk about all the horrific truths that exist in South Africa, because they are horrible. And farm murders...
Well, I mean, farm murders relates to the topic that we're talking about.
It does. But what I was going to say is farm murders are different in the sense that, like you said, the level of torture that these people go through. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are other victims of GBV that go through very horrible things. Just the other day, a gay male was... horribly killed, his throat was slit, almost decapitated, because allegedly, the case is still ongoing, allegedly because he's gay. They did this to him. The investigation is still ongoing, all that stuff. I don't have all the details, but Action Society has been following this case, and it's horrible. So there are other people that experience, unfortunately, horrible things in South Africa. But like you just pointed out, South Africa is, unfortunately, its crime rate is horrible. But when you look at farm murders as a whole, or just hone in on that, you start to realize, yes, there are a few farm attacks where nothing happens. It's just they get killed or they survive. It's just an attack. Nobody dies. But there are some of them that can make you pause, and you go like, but why would someone do that? If you just want the phone, if you just want their car, if you just want money, why do you have to do some of these horrific things that they do? Now, moving on to something that you and I wanted to talk about, which is the white genocide. We touched on it just now. I think you and I both agree that the term white genocide, if you were to look at what that means that there's stages that are happening that would equate to white people being exterminated.
Yeah.
I would not go that far to say that. I would go that far to say that maybe there's an Afrikaner genocide, maybe slowly. But again, to your point, this is at the stages we're seeing now, and I'm going to go through the stages very briefly. It's like you said, you're seeing this kid in school who's now chopped off a bunny's head and is laughing about it. Eventually he's going to do some other pretty messed up shit. Like
he starts hurting his brothers, his siblings, his friends.
You start to see those stages, and you can kind of predict where this is going to head. And this is where I kind of agree that there is some movement or something is happening, something is brewing.
But also at the same time, Joe, like for example, you mentioned the case just now about the gay guy who was murdered viciously. In the case of this, especially farm attacks, you don't have a politician talking about raping women. You don't have a politician talking about murdering or shooting the gays.
No, as a matter of fact, EFF themselves have been known to advocate against GBV, to be on the side of LGBTQ, to condemn any violence against that community and women.
They've got that. You don't have that happening, but you do have a political party calling for violence against a specific group.
Yes,
farmers.
Yes,
it's insane.
Exactly. And that's the thing. So you've got stage one is classification, where you classify. That's self-explanatory. You've classified who the bad person or who you deem as the enemy or whatever.
Yeah.
Then
which
you have
in this case would be, in South Africa's case, would be the white Afrikaner, the white Boer, not specifically English Afrikaans, but the white farmer, not anybody else.
Yeah. And then you have symbolization, which it gives names or other symbols to the classification. So like, for example, they name the people Jews or gypsies, So again, Boer,
the oppressor, the colonizer, and again, think about what we talked about earlier. You have almost like a mass acceptance. I can remember when we watched Black Panther, where they, as a joke, they mentioned the one guy that comes there that she what's it, King T'Challa's sister calls him the colonizer every single time she refers to it. It's like imagine referring to someone as the K word in a film. It's like it's a derogatory term. The colonizer. This is this.
And number 3 is discrimination. So a dominant group uses law, custom, and political power to deny the rights of other groups. So it's
kind of like BE.
Like BE. And then you've got dehumanization. One group denies the humanity of the other group.
I've seen a lot of that on Twitter. A lot of that. I've seen that. And this is up until kind of Elon took over. Yeah. It was never taken down. It was like, all the time. And shoot the Boer. That's basically that.
Yeah. One settler, one bullet. That's another. So organization. This is where genocide is always organized, usually by the state, often using militias to provide deniability of state responsibility. So we're not there yet.
No. Yeah, that would be like that's like Hitler did that with I think it was the youth. What's it called? He had a name for it. It was they would go out and they would go smash up a Jewish guy's their shop, and they would go break. They go break up the synagogue. They would go smash the windows, and they started with little things like that. And this is where we get this context from.
Well, maybe one could argue that maybe a little bit of the organization, stage 5, is the farm attacks.
Yeah. That's the thing. You could go you could call it that. No, 100%. Yeah.
And then stage 6, and I do think this is happening. Polarization. So extremists drive the groups apart. Hate groups broadcast polarizing propaganda. Motivations for targeting a group are indoctrinated through mass media.
You mean like the time he was at a stadium singing "Shoot the Birds"? Only a struggle song, guys. Don't worry. Doesn't mean anything.
Which means we could be at stage 7 at the moment, where it's preparation. Plans are made for genocide killings, national or perpetrator
I mean, I don't
groups.
think we're there. I mean, it probably would get leaked. But the thing is, I think between stage 5 and stage 7, it's sort of an amalgamation of somewhere between that.
Yeah.
Thing, like I think it could take something, and this is where his rhetoric that we played earlier, where he said to Mark Oppenheimer, where he's not calling for the genocide of white people yet. It's like, okay, so that's stage 7. That's what he was referring to.
Yeah,
that's calling for that, especially specifically.
Yeah. And then persecution, which is basically victims are identified and separated out because of their ethnic or religious identity. Death lists are drawn up in state-sponsored genocide. Members of victim groups may be forced to wear identifying symbols, as we saw Hitler did that with the Jews. We haven't. We're not there yet. We're definitely not seeing that, but we might. And then extermination begins, so we know that's self-evident what that is. And
I mean,
then,
that's just a combination of like the attacks on specific white-owned farms, like farmers, Afrikaner farms. Like you're seeing the attacks happen on it. Is that happening specifically as we're in that stages? No, it's a combination of something.
Well, extermination is a bit more than that. So it quickly becomes mass killing, legally called genocide.
So that is the, I think, as far as I understood, the
that's when you're sending them to the camps. Now you're like,
and this is what the sort of the intersectionals always go. It's not happening because they use that reference of like the government isn't exterminating farmers en masse. I'm going, no one's saying that. No one has said that. No one has gone there.
No.
But
and then there's last stage, which is denial, is the final stage that lasts throughout and always follows genocide. It is among the surest indicators of further genocidal massacres. The perpetrators of genocide dig up the mass graves, burn the bodies, try to cover up the evidence, and intimidate the witnesses. They deny that they committed any crimes and often blame what happened on the victims, victim blaming. They block investigations of the crimes and continue to govern until driven from power by force when they flee into exile. Now, I want to mention something here. There is something that Thabo Mbeki did when he was president. Even though I think he was an okay president for South Africa, a lot of the Afrikaners and farmers of South Africa don't like him because he actually took away the commandos, or it was a branch of the
military.
The division of the police actually that were protecting farmers from farm attacks. He disbanded that.
Well, I mean, I think it's just it falls in line with their 30, 40-year plan of just like eroding the country into almost nothingness. I mean, think about it. Like, how unheard of would it be? I imagine trying to tell my grandmother, who's passed away now, like for at least 20 years, trying to explain to her that 80 people are murdered a day here, and she would go like, "That's ridiculous. There's no way. That's like World War II kind of stats."
Yeah, it is. It is like at one point, the media actually did say that South Africa is worse than Afghanistan war zone. So, I mean, and that was recently. That was like this year, by the way. That was the beginning of 2023 when they said that. So, listen, I think to your point, is white genocide happening? I don't believe it's happening to every white person in South Africa. Now, I know that some people in the comment section might say like, yeah, but there's so much, like Mark said earlier, there's so much hate towards white people now, blah, 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 like white privilege and all that stuff. And yes, there is a rhetoric where it's becoming okay to demoralize white people.
Hate on white people.
And hate on white people.
Of course.
Is there a genocide happening? I think there's a lot of white people in the world, so it's going to be very difficult. Is there
even a white genocide in South Africa? No.
I do think there is a push to drive white people out of South Africa.
Oh, of
not
course.
necessarily kill them, but drive them out. Get rid of them. Like go back to Europe, like they always say, or something like that. Like just get out of our country. I do believe.
I think I heard that. I think I heard that 3 times. 3 people said that. One person said it to me 3 times today. I'm ex. Well, I can't because I'm from here.
Yeah.
I'm South African.
So yeah, I do think there is that kind of rhetoric and that kind of attempt or movement or whatever. Is there a genocidal situation in South Africa? Maybe if there is a case to be made, it would be against the Afrikaner. That specific group,
Specifically the farmer Afrikaner. Yeah.
That group could have a leg to stand on when it comes to that, because a lot of what I just read, the stages, it's happening. Like it is happening.
And it's a tiny community. If you think about it, like if you go, let's hypothetically say that the white race is 6%, the Afrikaans would be what, like 2 or 3%
of the white.
So I mean, you're talking about something like 3 million, 4 million people you're going of that 2 million, about what, hypothetically 20 are murdered every month.
Yep.
Like it's starting. It's again, it's not on the genocidal vibe like the what happened in Germany, but it's like it's not cool. You have the elements of it. You've got the beginning stages, late stages, middle stages of it. It's something we should be aware of. And this is another thing that I just cannot fathom is again, compare this to what happened in the States with BLM. Where you have this entire movement on the fundamentals are exactly the same. You have are police killing black people en masse? No, they're not.
No.
Well, how many incidents was there in that year? I think there were 17 incidents. 350 million people in America. There were 17 incidents of a police shooting an unarmed black man. They rioted for 3 months over this.
Yeah,
and at the end of the day, when we found out,
no, Mark, everything was fiery but peaceful. Don't forget.
Yeah, of course. It's nuts. It's the same thing. It's just applied to a different race and different people in a different country.
Yep.
Like just the hypocrisy of it is insane.
And I think I know that you and I might get some hate from the wokies, because of what we're saying. But hey, Based Edge podcast, bitches. So, like, I really don't care. The thing is, like, I've grown to, you may not feel Afrikaans, but you have a heritage of Afrikaner. Yeah. And maybe you've decided to not embrace that culture very much, and that's your right to do so.
Yeah.
I have always, not always, there was a time when I didn't believe about farm attacks and that they were dangerous and stuff like that. But after doing proper research and learning a little bit more and getting more into South African politics, I realized there is something there, and I have a deep love for the South African farmer. I've been to many boeras on, I don't know if that's a word, but to many boers on their farm. I've been to a tobacco farmer.
Vibe,
it's great, and the hospitality is always great. The food is always great, and these are salt of the earth people, man. They really just want to farm and provide for their family and hand down the farm to the next generation, and the next generation will do the same, blah, blah, blah. And what is happening to these farmers in South Africa is atrocious. And what people seem to really not take into account, going back to the point that you were trying to make earlier about how this isn't just random people here that are being killed. These are farmers. And what makes them even slightly more important, even to you or me, these are people that are providing food to the country. Okay. And not just food, but other products as well, like tobacco or whatever. Now, what do you do when all your farmers are gone?
Wait, who is it that said, Joe, that they don't need farmers because they buy their food at Checkers and Pick n Pay and all the stores?
Oh man,
some politician, ANC politician, like that. They don't really need farmers. They just buy it from the shops.
That still hurts my brain that they said that.
Yeah,
my brain pains. It's not a headache. It's like I can feel my brain going, like just trying to.
And I think, and like one thing I think, because this entire narrative, the entire thing we're talking about, the farm murders, the farm attacks, the sort of especially in the context of Africa, it has to do with land, which I think is maybe a massive topic, which we should dedicate an entire show to, is speak about the land, the issue of the land. We should maybe get someone that's a good historian. And
what if we got an EFFer?
But the thing is, will they come on with the sort of the willingness to have a intellectual, fair conversation and not just steamroll? Because that is their tactic. They steamroll a conversation. They're just going to go, the land was theirs, the land was theirs. Going, no, it wasn't. Both the Bantu, the Zulu, and the Xhosa immigrated down, just like the Dutch eventually came here, and then the English and all the other people that eventually ended up here. The only people that was in this entire territory was the Bushmen. But also, they also immigrated down from here. If you go look at the evolution of the world, northern Africa, that's where everybody came down from. So everybody eventually immigrated here. No one was born here. Sorry. Depends how far back you go. Like,
I think the Khoisan are the only ones that are really native to.
But I mean, were they really here? If we go look at the history of, like, prehistoric history, the cavemen, where they evolved from.
Well, I mean, yeah, you could go that.
Everybody migrated down. Like the Bushmen were call them
but
Bushmen.
But hasn't South Africa been called the cradle of mankind?
Yeah,
which means that
it's only because they found some kind of skeleton here or something. But again, there could have been cave people back then. But Khoisan were like, what do you call it? The sort of, what was it? The nomads, where they would travel to a different area. They would never stay one place, and they would immigrate further and further and further, and that's how they come here. But most of everything, if you go look at evolutionary books, if you read a lot of that kind of stuff, everything kind of originated from Egypt. It came down the further back you go. So again, everybody came here.
Well, I mean, I would be, for those listening, I would be willing to have someone from the EFF on the 100%. Show. I mean, I'm not opposed to it.
If they only one condition I would have with that is be a good faith actor.
Yeah,
at least have a conversation. And, don't steamroll. If I mean, that's the thing. I will just go halfway through going, oh, dude, get wrecked. Cheers.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I'll try and get Ernst on as well. Probably not at the same time as the EFFer.
Oh, no.
But I think what would be a good way of doing it is trying to get someone from the EFF, or even someone that just believes that the land is theirs or whatever in South Africa.
Let's argue both positions.
We get them on first, then whatever we were maybe confused about or some questions that came out from that interview, we can maybe put it to Ernst and see what he thinks and see what he would say. That way it's a bit mitigated and it doesn't get out of hand.
Of course.
But anyway, we've gone way over time, which is fine.
Oh, yes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, those of you that are still listening, thank you so much. We hope that you've enjoyed this riveting conversation. I think you and I have said all that needs to be said, really. I mean, we will visit this topic again at some point, probably when the verdict is out or when they're at the Constitutional Court, because apparently that's going to happen. But I think there is a conclusion here that you and I can both agree that singing Kill the Boer, and for that matter, singing any song that is an incitement to violence against any minority or human being or whatever group is wrong. It's wrong. It doesn't matter what race you are, what your history, nothing. As long as you are saying that a certain group of people should be killed, you're wrong. You're just wrong about it.
100%.
And the topic of white genocide, I think we also agree that maybe Afrikaans genocide, white genocide, still a long ways away. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Mark.
No. I think we've covered it, and we've had a really good discussion about this. And also, the reason we can go over time is because the Based Edge podcast, the rules don't apply.
Yes. But it's okay. I mean, I don't care if it's an hour 20 minutes. So other than that, we will have a discussion on hate speech. So keep an eye on our channels and all our social media. Follow us, like, subscribe. You know the deal. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening in. Thank you for all the comments as well. You guys commented on our episodes. So keep those comments coming in. We love hearing your feedback. And again, suggest anything you guys want us to talk about, anything at all, conspiracy theories, hot topics, dating, whatever you can think of. You want us to talk about the LGBTQ, you want us to talk about transgenderism, you want us to talk about, okay, some of these topics might be a little bit sensitive for YouTube, so you may not be able to find it on YouTube, but we will do an episode depending on what the topic is.
Good words.
Yes, good words. We can do that. Good words, yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I've been Joe Emilio, co-host of the Based Edge podcast, along with my co-host,
Mark Rock.
There we go. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, we both have our own YouTube channels. Links in the description. Please go check it out if you haven't yet. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, stay based.
Bye.